Members in this House, Mr. Dennis Tan, Mr. Henry Kwek, Mr. Vikram Nair, and Mr. Ganesh Rajaram, have filed questions on 2 recent national service deaths within the SAF and on general matters related to training safety. I propose to address their queries in this statement. Here, I want to beg the House's indulgence and patience. I will give details as much as we know. In September last year, Sergeant Gavin Chan died when the bionics vehicle he commanded rolled over. And in April this year, Corporal Dave Lee died from complications of a heat stroke. Both were serving their full-time national service. Sergeant Chan had served 1 year and 8 months, Corporal Lee for 4 months. We treat each training-related death with utmost seriousness. We deal with it at the highest level within the SAF and MINDEF. This is the Armed Forces Council that convenes an independent commission of inquiry to examine thoroughly the circumstances leading to the incident. It's a 4-member team chaired by a senior civil servant from outside MINDEF and includes a senior doctor from the public sector. The COI has full powers. It can access all relevant information, access any personnel it feels, call them up to investigate the circumstances leading to death, and they will determine the events that contributed or persons that contributed to the event, to the death, and make recommendations to rectify any lapses found. Separately from the SAF and MINDEF, the police conduct parallel investigations, and the coroner may decide to hold a public inquiry. Let me first share the detailed findings for the late Sergeant Chan, for which all investigative processes have been completed, including those by the Queensland authorities, because the incident occurred in Shoalwater Bay and therefore governed under the laws of Australia. Speaker, with your permission, I would now like to ask the clerk to distribute the report from the Queensland coroner.
Yes, please.
This report from the coroner was provided to Sergeant Chan's parents. Sergeant Chan's parents have given us permission for it to be distributed to members of this House, except for the post-mortem findings, which are redacted out of respect for the privacy of Sergeant Chan and his family. The Queensland coroner's report provides the circumstances leading to the death of Sergeant Chan as a result of multiple injuries sustained from motor trauma vehicle. I will read excerpts which you can follow in the distributed report. On 15 September 2017, Sergeant Chan, who was participating in exercise Wallaby, an annual training exercise conducted by the SAF at Shoalwater Bay training area in Queensland, died after the infantry vehicle known as the Bionics he was commanding rolled and he suffered significant injuries. The police conducted an investigation into the circumstances of the incident. The police found no defect with the infantry fighting vehicle. The police found from scene evidence and witness information that its path was halted due to an obstruction. Sergeant Chan, who was commander of the vehicle, gave orders for the driver to reverse slowly down the hill. The commander, who was stationed in the turret with his upper body clear of the vehicle's structure, was giving instructions to the driver, directing him to reverse and where to reverse. All confirmed that the driver was continuing to reverse slowly and in accordance with the commander's instructions when the vehicle traversed over a flat granite rock for about 4 meters before the vehicle became stuck on a large boulder, holding up the vehicle undercarriage. The commander instructed the driver to turn the steering wheel in an attempt to gain traction when suddenly the vehicle dropped down over the rock, rolling sideways, before coming to rest further down the slope. Sergeant Chan was ejected from the vehicle and suffered significant injuries. Life support was commenced at the scene before he was airlifted to hospital, where he was later pronounced deceased. The police investigations established that there were no defect with the vehicle, and there was no suggestion that the driver was doing anything other than reversing very slowly and at the specific direction of Sergeant Chan. The police considered that it was likely that the incident occurred because of the commander's decision to reverse on a slightly different path down the hill, and that his choice to be positioned with part of his body outside the vehicle exposed him to greater risk of injury. The Singapore Armed Forces recommendation is only the head and shoulders to be outside the turret of the vehicle during operations. The police considered it was a very unfortunate incident whilst deployed in difficult terrain in blackout conditions. It was noted by the police that the driver was driving in compliance with SAF policy at the time of the incident and under the specific instruction from Sergeant Chan. Close quote. These are the findings of the Queensland authorities. The Commission of Inquiry here appointed by the Armed Forces Council corroborated from their own investigations the findings by the Queensland authorities. The COI further determined that Sergeant Chan and his platoon mates were sufficiently trained and qualified to participate in the exercise. They had no mental or physical conditions that could have affected their fitness to participate. The medical and safety coverage provided was found to be timely, adequate, and proper. In addition, the COI conducted interviews with SAF soldiers at the exercise to piece together the chronology of events that led to the bionics overturning. The mishap occurred during night training. 4 bionics units. For members' information, armor units do this regularly because they have to become proficient to fight at night or under conditions of poor visibility. That is something that they must learn to do. Safety lapses were identified by the COI. First, the night vision device of 3rd Sergeant Chan's vehicle was not working. They are issued a night vision device which allows them to see in darkness, but it was not working. It is needed if armored vehicles are to move at night. Without night vision device, armored vehicles can move, but only with the driver's hatch open and headlights switched on for better visibility. That's in the training safety regulations. However, according to the driver, Sergeant Chan felt that the headlights would, quote-unquote, give away their position to the enemy, and decided to continue training without headlights. Accounts from his platoon mates to the COI attest to Sergeant Chan's strong motivation and high standards of performance during training. Sergeant Chan was zealous in his training and probably wanted to complete the night mission assigned to the armor unit. Unfortunately, in the darkness, the vehicle entered an area with a steep incline and boulders. At that point, Sergeant Chan stopped the vehicle, dismounted to assess the surroundings, and found that a boulder was blocking the vehicle. He remounted the bionics, sitting on the top edge of the vehicle commander hatch, and told the driver to open his hatch and switch on the vehicle headlights so that they could reverse away from this area. Unfortunately, as they were doing so, the vehicle overturned on the steep embankment. The 3 other soldiers in the bionics did not suffer any injuries. The COI concluded that Sergeant Chan's injuries resulted from him being thrown out of the vehicle as it overturned, causing his demise. The Queensland Coroner's report agreed that this was a causative event. In the report, I quote, "In the circumstances, I find that Sergeant Chan died when he was ejected from the vehicle which he was directing. It is unfortunate that he took the decision to position himself with a significant portion of his body outside the vehicle. The incident," the coroner's report continues, "is none other than a very unfortunate accident due to the nature of the difficult terrain and the operation then being performed," unquote. Arising from their investigations, the Queensland's police found no basis to charge any person. The COI also found no negligence, foul play, or misconduct, but recommended that the SAF review its training safety regulations on the position of the armored fighting vehicle commander, so that if the vehicle commander is unable to execute the overturning drill, which means that he's able to drop quickly into the vehicle, if he can't do this, because you're much better protected inside the vehicle than out, the vehicle must stop. The COI also recommended stronger compliance and checks on night vision devices, and to enforce the wearing seatbelts rule for passengers when the vehicle is moving. The SAF has followed up and also implemented additional training for armored vehicle commanders on uneven terrain. Training safety regulations, TSRs, have been tightened to limit exposure of the body of the vehicle commander to waist level when executing certain operational tasks. The SAF has also implemented drills for day to night and night to day transitions. And this includes night vision devices and other night fighting equipment on the checklist which need to be in working order. Wearing seatbelts are enforced, with disciplinary action taken against those who have not done so. Sergeant Chan's death was classified as a training-related incident and compensation offered to the family. Sergeant Chan's parents accepted the honors of a military funeral. The Armour Formation paid their last respects to a dedicated commander whom they are proud to call one of their own. Sergeant Gavin Chan, is a good soldier. Let me now turn to Corporal First Class Dave Lee. To investigate Corporal Lee's deaths, all the processes that I have described for Sergeant Chua, the COI, the police investigations, Sergeant Chan, the COI, police investigations, and coroner's inquiry are yet to be completed. His death was about 2 weeks or so ago. So I'll only share information from our own internal investigations. And when members have clarifications later, and I encourage you to ask for clarifications, I'll share what we have, but with some caveats, that the COI and the independent coroner's inquiry, if held, and the police investigations will have to come to their own facts. On 18 April this year, Corporal Lee displayed signs of heat injury after completing an 8-kilometer fast march in Bedok camp. An SAF medic attended to Corporal Lee to bring down his core temperature, and he was evacuated to the camp's medical center where body cooling measures and treatment were instituted by the SAF medical team there. He was brought to Changi General Hospital and warded in the ICU. Unfortunately, Corporal Lee's conditions deteriorated, and he passed away on 30th April at Changi General Hospital, about 12 days after his admission. Following the incident, the Army declared a safety timeout for all training, and also specifically reviewed training that posed risk of heat injuries. During the timeout, commanders were reminded of the importance of safety measures, which includes hydration regimes, temperature-taking regimes, management of the work rest cycle, I'll explain what this means, and identification of personnel who could be at greater risk of heat injuries. These are currently in place. These are preventive safety measures against heat injuries in place now. Well, the SAF has not had any death from heat strokes since 2009. Heat injuries do occur each year. We are at risk. We're a tropical island, hot, humid. So in 2010, the SAF convened a work group which included many external experts to address this specific problem. This work group recommended clinical practice guidelines that were endorsed by MOM and the then Singapore Sports Council. These guidelines form the regimes which I've just mentioned against heat injuries, and they include mandatory water parades before, during, and after a training activity. We take temperature before the training, and any soldier with a temperature above 37.5 degrees centigrade is not allowed to train. In addition, we take the recorded ambient temperature. If it exceeds a certain level during training, rest periods are mandated at appropriate intervals to allow soldiers to cool down. This is one of the recommendations of the expert panel, which the SAF follows dutifully. And it's not just taking a thermometer. We use a wet bulb globe temperature heat stress monitor. It's a handheld device. It'll give you the ambient temperature, calculated with the humidity, and based on that, the SAF institutes work-rest cycles. So if it's below a certain temperature, for instance, you can exercise for 30 minutes, but you must rest for 15. I think above 33 degrees centigrade, you must exercise for 15 and rest for 30, so on and so forth. Commanders and soldiers are reminded to look out for signs and symptoms of heat injury during training. In the event of a heat injury, we have on-site cooling measures, which include the removal of clothes, application of ice or water to the affected servicemen. The SAF medical centers have customized built evaporative body cooling units for heat injuries. Our commanders, soldiers, regulars, NSFs, and NSmen know from their own experience that it is the consistent practice for these processes and precautions to be carried out. We must press on to achieve zero fatalities from heat injuries. The SAF is currently evaluating the use of individual wearable devices to monitor a soldier's condition real-time. MINDEF will also commission an external medical panel, as we did in 2010, to review the SAF's policies and measures for the management of heat injuries and recommend improvements. This panel should consider further steps, especially when recorded temperatures in Singapore over the last 2 decades have gone up, increasing the risk of heat injuries. As these 2 cases show, after every training-related death, independent, impartial investigative processes will determine the key facts, arrive at the appropriate conclusions, and we will take corrective measures to prevent mistakes from being repeated. And this includes punishing those who contributed to the death through reckless and negligent acts. SAF servicemen can be charged and punished in civilian criminal courts, even if their acts was committed within the SAF and as part of their duty. I have said so in this House previously, but these examples bear repeating for their salutary warnings. In 2012, an SAF vehicle overturned during an exercise, and it caused the death of a soldier. The conducting officer, who appointed a serviceman to drive the military vehicle, even though the conducting officer knew that the serviceman did not have a driving license, a military driving license, was convicted in the criminal courts and sentenced to 6 months imprisonment. The officer was found to have committed a rash act and attempted to pervert the course of justice. In 2005, the supervising officer, the conducting officer, and instructors who were involved in the death of a trainee who was submerged in water during a combat survival training course were sentenced to 6 to 12 months in prison. In all cases, prosecutions of SAF servicemen in criminal courts are based on independent police investigations, and when the AGC decides that there are sufficient grounds to prosecute. It will be the criminal courts that determine the level of culpability and commensurate punishments. Separately, the coroner may hold an inquiry to determine the causes of death and contributory factors. The SAF fully accepts these judicial processes and indeed deems them necessary to achieve and maintain a zero fatality training safety system. I know that there are accusations against the commanders of Corporal Lee, but we should let the independent COI and police investigations fully investigate the circumstances to establish the facts. We will deal with any wrongdoing thoroughly. Those that deserve to be punished will be punished. If any persons are found to have been negligent or culpable, they will be punished according to the law, both in civilian and military courts. But we must be careful not to discourage or unfairly punish commanders who are executing their responsibilities dutifully. Because many commanders are NS men too, who take seriously this mission we in society have imposed on them to train capable fighting units able to defend Singapore against all threats. And if he's serious about his duty and he wants to build a fighting unit, we must be careful that we don't discourage them or punish them unfairly. Indeed, we have many positive examples of commanders who risk their own safety to protect trainees. In 2013, NSF Commander Lieutenant Kamala Sivang pulled a recruit down to take cover in the grenade-throwing bay. The recruit was new. He held the grenade, took out the safety pin, and dropped the grenade. Lieutenant Kamala Sivang's first instinct was to pull the recruit down, cover himself over got the grenade away. Thankfully, both suffered minor injuries which they recovered from. Even if there was no ill intent, our national servicemen, full-time national service commanders, train adequately? And do they have the maturity to exercise good judgment and consciousness regarding training safety? This is what NMP Ganesh Rajaram asked. All commanders undergo safety training in both Specialist Cadet School and OCS. In addition, we have unit safety officers, and these are ex-regulars who have held senior appointments who support the safe conduct of exercises. And these unit safety officers don't have just book learning. They have actual experience conducting and taking part in training and operations. But unit safety officers can't be everywhere all the time. So for instance, Exercise Wallaby, we send 4,000 to 5,000 men down to Shoalwater Bay who train. A strong safety culture for a zero fatality training system can only be achieved if every soldier has that ingrained concern for the well-being of himself and his peers. And on the ground, it is the creed of the commanders to take care of the men. If you don't know how to take care of your men, and if you've shown that you don't know how to take care of the men, we will remove your command position, we will remove your rank. Commanders are taught to encourage their men and buddies to flag out when they do not feel well. Individual soldiers are advised to highlight risky behavior and safety breaches, and they can report them to their superiors without fear of reprisal. There's a 24-hour training safety hotline for commanders and soldiers to report safety incidents and near misses. So not only when something happens, but a near miss reported. We have another external review panel for SAF safety. It consists of prominent safety experts and professionals outside the SAF, and it helps MINDEF scrutinize our safety management system. I have attached a list of its members. The current chairman is Mr. Heng Chiang Ni, who was also chairman of the Workplace Safety and Health Council till March this year. This panel reports to the minister on the rigor of the system and presents recommendations to improve. These are qualified, eminent members, and I like this external review panel to do more. So for a start, MINDEF has discussed with the chairman of ERPSS, who has agreed to include one of their members in the COIs for all training-related deaths. In addition, the COI will now submit its full report to the external review panel for safety for further questions, comments, and views. In turn, the external review panel will provide a written report on the COI findings, which will be made public. With these multiple layers of safety, and with experts within and outside assisting the SAF, we can move decisively to make zero training deaths the norm. I know it's difficult, but it must be done. Over the last 2 decades, we have had on average about 1 NS training-related death a year. From 2013 to 2016, we had no NS training deaths. 4 years, none. And this shows that zero fatalities can be achieved with effort. The Chief of Defence Force, the service chiefs have assured me that safety has always been and will continue to get their highest command attention to achieve zero fatalities. But we need every level to play their part, down to the individual commander and soldier, to protect their own well-being and that of their men and their buddies. Our SAF commanders know that precious sons are entrusted to us when they train during national service. Our commanders take this seriously and never take this trust for granted. We will do our very best to achieve zero fatalities in training. We will work in unison and instill in every commander and soldier a strong sense of responsibility in ensuring training safety at all levels. Mr. Speaker and members of this House, I've taken this opportunity to give as much relevant details as MINDEF and SAF has involving the deaths of NS men Sergeant Chua and Corporal Dave Lee. I would encourage members in this House to seek any clarification, because Parliament is a critical and appropriate forum to ensure that we have done all that is possible to make safety a top priority so that every soldier is well protected as they defend Singapore. Our soldiers deserve no less.